Okay, so these notes are going to be on different types of community interactions. Remember that from our levels of organization, an ecological community are all the populations that live in one space at one time. And so you're going to have lots of different species in an ecosystem interacting with one another. Different types of interactions have different effects on the participants, and these effects can either be positive, negative, or neutral. Positive will show with a plus sign, negative with a negative sign, and neutral with a 0. First type of community interaction we're going to talk about is called mutualism. And the way I think about this is a mutually beneficial relationship between both species. It's defined here as a long-term, close interaction between two species in which both partners benefit. And so the effect on species 1 and on species 2 are both going to be positive. A couple examples, beneficial bacteria exist inside of our digestive tract that help us digest food. The bacteria benefit in the fact that they get a constant food source, and the human benefits by getting help with digesting the food. Pollination is a great example of mutualism. Bees, when they go to get pollen from a flower, they have to get the nectar. They're not actually after the pollen. They're after the sweet nectar that's down here in the flower. But to get to that, they have to get pollen all over themselves. Now, pollen, remember, is sperm, plant sperm. And so the plant, since it can't move, is covering the bee in pollen so that the bee, when it goes to the next flower, will deposit some of that sperm. So the bee, what it gets out of it, the relationship, is it gets nectar, and the flower, what it gets out of it is help reproducing. Here's an example of fire shrimp, which pick dead skin, parasites, and other morsels from the bodies of living fish. This is an eel. The shrimp gets the food, which is a plus for the shrimp, and the fish or eel, it gets a bit of grooming. Competition is another example of a community interaction. This is where organisms of two species use the limited resources in the environment, and they both have a negative impact on each other. Since both are competing, neither is really getting a positive result from this, and so both species are going to have negative effects. Leopards and lions feed on the same prey and can be negatively impacted by the presence of the other because they'll have less food. Competition between anemones and sea stars for space in a tide pool is another example. And then, like plants, are always competing for light in a forest. So competition between plant species 1 and plant species 2 would be another example. Predation is an example of a plus-minus community interaction where one species is benefiting and the other species is obviously not benefiting, the one that's being eaten. So this is where a member of one species of predator eats all or part of the body of a member of another species, its prey. Predation by lions on a zebra, predation by hawk on a lizard, that's to say hawk or hark on a lizard. A special type of bird. Predation by caterpillar on a leaf. Parasitism is also plus-minus. It's a long-term close interaction between two species in which one benefits and the other is harmed. Parasitism is similar to predation in that they're both plus-minus. One species benefits, the other species is harmed or doesn't benefit. But the difference between the two is that with parasitism, usually the parasite isn't killing its host, like the predator would kill its prey. If the parasite kills its host, then it's run out of a source of nutrition. Though sometimes parasites will have multiple hosts and they won't be anchored down to one host. For example, a mosquito feeding on humans is going to feed on lots of different hosts. Laying of larvae wasps in a caterpillar, implantation of tapeworms in the human intestine. All right, so this tapeworm, for example, it's benefiting because it's getting nutrients from the human, Human is being harmed because the tapeworm is getting the nutrients that should be going to the human, but it's different than predation in that the tapeworm isn't killing the human. Commensalism is an interaction between two species in which one benefits and the other is unaffected. So one species gets a positive benefit and the other is neither beneficial nor harmful. So epiphytes, which are air plants, they live on trees with no effect really on the trees. They have roots, but those roots are able to pick up moisture from the air around it. So these live in really humid environments. Hermit crabs live in shells left behind by snails. Doesn't hurt the snail, it's already gone, but the hermit crab benefits by getting shelter. Barnacles create home sites by attaching themselves to whales. The barnacle gets a place to live. The whale doesn't really care either way. And then there's amensalism, which is an association between two species in which one is inhibited or destroyed and the other is unaffected. So one species neither benefits nor is harmed, the other species is harmed. So some plants, for instance, secrete substances that inhibit the growth or kill nearby competing plants. Or here, a herd of elephants walking across a landscape may crush fragile plants. The elephant, by walking on the plants, it doesn't help or harm the elephant, but it definitely harms the plants. Finally, there's neutralism, in which an interaction between two species is incidental. It doesn't affect either one. Neither species is benefiting, neither species is harmed. So, for example, a tarantula walking on this tree limb would be an example of neutralism. And then here's just a little table to kind of give you an idea about the effect that's having on one species versus the effect it's having on the other species and what you would call that, right? So if it was mutually both positive, mutualism. If one species was hurt while the other species gained something, it would be either predation or parasitism.